Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. I am your host, Ralph Brogdon, and joining me today is Christopher Kai. He is an entrepreneur, a global speaker, founder of the Gifted Professional Speaker Program, and an Amazon #1 best-selling author of the book Big Game Hunting, Networking with Billionaires, Executives, and Celebrities. Chris has given over 1,000 presentations to a global audience from 30 countries, and these audiences include Fortune 500 companies you've heard of, American Express and Google, to name a few. He has been featured on Forbes, ABC News, Fast Company, and Inc. magazine has referred to him as the Billionaire Networker. Christopher, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for your time, Ralph, and this opportunity.
So before we get really deeply into it, I've hit the highlights, but tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do and how you got started in this line of work.
Yeah, at the core, every success we have in business is based on relationships. And for me, growing up in New York City, my mother was a school teacher and my father was a case manager. I didn't have that money, access, or power. And so when I started building my own consulting firm about 16, 17 years ago, I realized that really the relationships you build are at the core why you become successful or why you become a failure. And when people kept asking me, hey, Chris, you got to write this book. You have these phenomenal clients. You travel the world. You meet billionaires. You collaborate with them. How do you go about going out and meeting people and connecting? So at the core, it's really about I saw this need that my clients and colleagues and friends kept asking me to fill. And so I wrote this book about networking with billionaires and executives, and I travel all around the world talking about the art and science of building successful business relationships.
Awesome. So big game hunting, and this is really taking networking to the next level. What are some of the differences between big game hunting, networking with billionaires, executives, and celebrities versus maybe ordinary networking? What's some of the distinctions you've learned?
Well, the reality is, we're all busy people, Ralph, but if you're a millionaire, a multimillionaire, or a celebrity, you might have, instead of 10 emails, you'd have 100, 1,000, or 10,000. So if you really want to grow your business at the highest levels, you really can't just go to your local Starbucks or your local Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there are certain charities that I just mentioned to you, a conference that costs $12,000, right? So the people you meet there and the opportunities you meet there are just exponentially more powerful than, again, going to a Chamber of Commerce. Now, I'm not knocking Chamber of Commerces, but, so many of the business people I meet, Ralph, they say they want to scale their business. They say they want to get larger price points for their consulting projects, but yet they're not going to the right places, whether it's the nonprofits, conferences, or the associations they have. And so the biggest difference is the people that are what I call big gamers, people influence, they're just a lot more busier, which means you need to brand yourself and stand out that much more powerful and more succinct because they just don't have time to waste.
So what is, you work with people to help them be able to do this effectively and to connect with these more these larger than life celebrity type people. What's the biggest barrier? What's the most common problem you run into when you're trying to help the average ordinary business person to get better at networking in general and specifically to be able to reach out and effectively network with billionaires and executives who are very busy? How do you, what's the big obstacle there that prevents people from success?
Well, the first one, frankly, Ralph, is the mindset is they wonder why they even have any desire to meet billionaires or executives. And at the core, it's about standing out. So when you meet people, let's say you have a function of 100 people, you get a bunch of business cards, you get excited, you go back home, and what happens to those business cards usually, Ralph?
Well, usually you either don't manage them well, you get intimidated, or you just get too busy and you forget them.
Yeah, and at the core, I mean, it's about standing out. So I don't actually have business cards, but when I did, I would have a photo of when I was in Tel Aviv, Israel, and I would share stories because stories are 22 times more memorable than facts. And so the thing and the biggest problem I see with people that go networking, the first question they ask them is like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, that's what everyone said. What if I said to you, Ralph, well, who's the one person you most enjoy spending your time with and why? And if you ask a question like that, it just allows someone to be a little more deep and a little more reflective on their response. But at the core, if you want to build better clients and better connections, it's about just being more extraordinary and standing out more. So when I meet people, they always ask me, what's the biggest mistake? And people don't stand out. They just tell them what they do, and they don't really ask or inquire about more reflective questions, relationship-based questions. And so, for instance, if I meet Terry Hatcher, and a lot of my clients are realtors, and Terry Hatcher, I met her at the Art Gallery in Beverly Hills, and she was a daughter, Emerson, at the time. Her daughter, Emerson, was 17 at the time. And so I talked to Terry. I'm like, tell me more about your daughter. And, Emerson's really passionate about nonprofit work, specifically with children's hospitals. And so the next time I met Terry, even though I've never met her, I said to Terry Hatcher, hey, how's Emerson doing? Oh, Emerson's going to be in her first year of Brown University as a freshman. She's so excited. I'm like, oh, she's still involved with charities, And so this is a woman that I don't know at all, and she's a celebrity. Now, that could be applied to anyone, frankly, but at the core, are you having real conversations about real relationships so that you do stand out? Because otherwise, you just kind of like blend together with everyone else that, ask them what they do and how amazing they are. But it's really about just being genuine about the questions you ask and really being curious about their interests and the relationships. And what happens when you do this is there's 4 specific happy chemicals. It's dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, and serotonin. And this is based on science, not just my opinion. And when I speak all around the world, it's really about how do you have that stronger connection, because when I go to functions, if someone asks me the first question, what do you do? I already know they're kind of like wanting to pigeonhole me. If I say, well, I'm a global speaker and a best-selling author, and I created this online speaker training program for entrepreneurs, that might not apply to their field. But given that I have a large Rolodex, I can help anyone that I meet because I do want to help people. That's the whole point of really business in general.
I like that. And I like the personal connection. I believe that we are in a relationship economy, and making those personal connections with people and seeing what you can give. And I think, and see if you agree that at the psychological level, people are people, whether they are billionaires, celebrities, famous people, executives. All of us still, regardless of that, have at our core the desire to be approved, acceptance, love, all of these emotional things that we still have going on, regardless of how famous or successful we may be. And so it sounds like what you're saying, the key is to be able to tap into that and make these personal connections. And that's how you stand out as opposed to the way everyone else goes about it.
Yeah, and it's not even just psychology, it's physiology, as I mentioned to you. Those 4 happy chemicals, this is based on science. Like if I'm talking to Terry or yourself, if I ask you, Ralph, again, who is the one person you most enjoy spending your time with?
Yeah, I'd start talking about my wife. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, and if I just kept getting into it, and the more I delve into your world, I'm genuinely curious though, right? And so if we actually just focus on that, because that's really at the core of how we connect with people. Like I'm in California, you're on the other side of the country, but kind of build this rapport where if we happen to do business together, great. But if we don't, I just got to know you as a person, as a loving husband, as a doting father, perhaps, and so those are the core connections that we all have as human beings.
That's really good. Now, what is something that someone could begin doing right now to make this shift out of the common approach, which is to, let me tell you about my business, to taking this approach where we want to give before we ask for in return, or we want to make a personal connection with people and lose the sales pitch? What could our listeners begin doing right now as business owners, as consultants, to begin to network and really up their game when it comes to networking and building these relationships?
Yeah, so that phrase, when people say, "Oh, Chris, I'm really good at working the room," and I'm really good at working in the room, and I often tell people, working in the room is a complete waste of time if you're in the wrong room. And so it's really true. Like I have people all the time saying, "Oh, Chris, I'm great at networking. I love working in the room." I'm like, "Oh, great." So again, it's about researching whom you want to work with. And I'll give you a very, very specific example. I have a lot of realtors that are clients across the country and the world. And they say to me, Chris, I want to sell more $500,000 properties or $1 million properties. And that'd be great. So I just break down the math. If let's say you want to sell someone a $1 million property, that means your client has to be making at least $150,000 per year, at least. If you break down the gross annual, gross monthly income they have relative to their mortgage payments. But to kind of keep the math really simple, if they want to sell $1 million homes in any place of the country, they need to be in rooms, the right rooms, where that person is making at least $150,000 per year, at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means any room does not have a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer. If you're not in an art gallery or a polo match or a five-star hotel, you're in the wrong rooms. And so the biggest problem that I see, and the first thing that I would suggest any real listener to do is literally look at, okay, if I'm charging $10,000 for my consultant fee, or $100,000 for my consultant fee, in my case, I would have clients that would make $100 million. So I know if I pitched a $100,000 project, that's like asking them for a penny. Now, those types of people are harder to find, but at the core, if you just focus on the math, where you look at what price point you have for your consulting project, and then you backtrack and say, okay, well, how much money does a company or a corporate executive need to make to warrant hiring me? So instead of just focusing on the billionaires, because that's a bit of a flashy title that I focus on, but it's really about if your clients make, or if you want to sell a $10,000 product, then you really want to be focusing on millionaires. If you want to sell a $1,000 product, then you want to be focusing on people that make at least $100,000, because too many people don't even focus on the most basic, equation of success, which is, well, just look at what you're charging for your price point, for your contracts, your consultant fees, or your services, and then rewind that equation and think about what specific income, annual income, that professional executive needs to make. And once you know that, then you start researching what types of events to go to or charity functions that are out there. And then they'll just save themselves so much time, frustration, and headaches because they'll be in the more right rooms. And life, frankly, Ralph, is about probability. There's no, if you believe in this whole law of the secret, I honestly almost want to laugh at some of these people that always talk about the law of attraction. I believe you can attract certain things, but at the core, it's about hustle. It's about effort. It's about tenacity and persistence. And so if you're just hoping that you'll be successful by being in the right room and you'll happen to be that person, I'm like, that's not how businesses run. Elon Musk doesn't just attract a rocket contract from the U.S. government. He doesn't just build a gigafactory in Nevada. He doesn't just say, I'm going to create an electric car. These are not these metaphysical thoughts he has. The guy, I've met him, I've interviewed him. He is humble, but he also works a lot of hours. And so for anyone that's listening to this, spend the time to research the events you're going to. Otherwise, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your efforts, and you're going to keep having the same cycle of insanity, hoping for bigger clients, hoping for bigger paychecks. And if you don't research the events, you've just wasted your time.
Very good. I'm speaking with Christopher Kai. He's an entrepreneur, global speaker, founder of the Gifted Professional Speaker Program, and he's a best-selling author of the book Big Game Hunting, Networking with Billionaires, Executives, and Celebrities. Earlier, Chris, you talked about stories being effective, and I saw on your website where you talk about tentpole stories. Explain to us what a tentpole story is and why it's important.
Sure. It goes back to what I said before, Ralph, about how do people stand out. And so when you go to an event with a tentpole speaker is like a Bill Gates or Warren Buffett who literally props up the entire tent or props up the entire event per se, right? That's the headline speakers, which is why attendees go to these events. Well, tentpole stories are the same thing relative to your life or my life. So instead of when someone asks you, "Oh, hey Ralph, how are you today?" And you're like, "I'm doing okay. I'm, same old." But if you ask me, "How's my day?" Well, I just had this phenomenal conference where, President George W. Bush was there and Vice President Joe Biden. So that's an example of what literally just happened this week in Beverly Hills, where it's a tentpole story where if you ask someone, well, what did they do? And I tell them, well, I just got to see President Bush speak with Michael Milken, that stands out. And so it doesn't have to be a conference. It could be as simple as, well, I gave a speech in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was talking to the shoe shine woman, and she shared with me about how she grew up in Ethiopia, and the government's really corrupt, but she loves the fact that Africans are really about family and Americans sometimes are all about individualism. But that's a tentpole story too. So whether I'm going to a conference with President George W. Bush or talking to a shoe shine person literally at an airport where I'm giving a speech at, it stands out. So that's why stories are 22 times more than the facts. And unfortunately, people don't share them well. But when you look at life, Ralph, you look at history, you look at the people that have changed the world, Steve Jobs didn't just create an iPhone. His story in and of itself is inspiring, that he grew out of wedlock parents, didn't like school, dropped out of college, but yet he became one of the most successful people in the world. Or you look at Mandela, who was in jail for 27 years, or you even look at Muhammad or Jesus Christ or Gandhi. I mean, every single person that has any significance in life, whether in business, in religion, in community, has a story to share.
Very good. Now, you have worked with some very large companies. You're a global speaker, and you work with companies like American Express and Google. How would a business owner, entrepreneur benefit by working with someone like you to help them get some success in this area?
So that's a great question, Ralph. I mean, I just started a program, an online training program called GPS for short. It stands for the Gifted Professional Speaker Program, where at the core, I help business owners, anyone in sales, brand themselves, understand the business of speaking so that they can actually go out there and get larger price point clients. So the reason why the Googles, American Expresses are powerful is because if you speak at those places, or if you work with those people, those are the people that have the biggest budgets. So whenever I have small business owners and entrepreneurs saying, "Hey, Chris, I really want to, grow to $1 million or a $10 million or $100 million company," then they have to be cognizant that those companies are not interested in working with you unless you brand yourself in a way that you're a multinational, or in my case, a global speaker. And it's more possible than you might think, because I had 6 speaking clients that had very little speaking experience, yet I got them into Farmers Insurance in Beverly Hills, where they spoke. And just simply from that one specific speaking opportunity, now they can brand themselves as having said, "I spoke at a Fortune 500 company." Mm-hmm. And another client, she's in Arizona, same thing. She spoke at Solar City. Now, she didn't even realize that Solar City is one of Elon Musk's companies. And so when I encourage people, if they do want to raise their price points, if they do want to scale their business, if they do want to really level up their game and get to the next level of networking, which is speaking, they really have to understand that their brand determines their price points. And so I meet all these speakers and authors, especially in the personal development space, and it's unfortunate, but they all are carbon copies of each other, meaning they all say they're a speaker and a coach, and I'm like, well, how do you stand out? I mean, if you were to Google the Billionaire Networker, Ralph, you would see my article that Inc. magazine wrote. I'm the only person that created this GPS program that helps entrepreneurs with the branding and business side, because most of these speaking programs focus more on the content side, but I talk about the business and branding. And it's about standing out. So at the core, whoever's listening, if your bio is someone that someone else can write, that's not a great bio. And if you read my bio, according to the context of the words, the sequence and synthesis I've used, no one can write that bio, which is why I've been able to reach out to people like Elon Musk or John Paul Mazur, who created, 2 multi-billion-dollar companies. No one can say what I said. And so for you, myself, or anyone listening, all you have to do is look at your bio on LinkedIn, on Snapchat, on Instagram, on Facebook. And if your bio is someone that someone else can write, that's not a great bio. You're not standing out, nor will you do well in life.
Do you believe, Christopher, that everyone has something that makes them unique and brandable, that they don't have to do things the way everybody else does them? Or does everybody have that? Or is it something that only a few select people have that uniqueness and everyone else is just kind of, they're fighting over the scraps that remain of being just ordinary? What's your take on that?
Well, I believe everyone has that uniqueness, but I equally believe most people don't know how to share that uniqueness with the world in a specific fashion. So they all have the uniqueness, which is why my clients hire me and invest in my program, but they don't know how to share that. So I'll give you a very specific example. One of my clients, he's a former military guy. He was in the U.S. Marines and the U.S. Air Force, and he's a personal chef. And he wants to create a program online to coach people how to have a more healthy lifestyle. So his initial bio or pitch, if you will, was just like everyone else. I want to help people. Okay, great. I'm a chef. Okay, great. But his bio that I ended up having him edit was that, he's an entrepreneur, personal chef, and was a former air traffic control team leader. Just that one statement of the fact that he was like a U.S. Marines air traffic control team leader, coupled with the fact that he's an entrepreneur and personal chef, that one basic sentence, which might seem simple, stands out above everything else that he's ever written in his life, like literally. And so what I do is help people. Another example is a woman, a female client of mine. She is passionate about meditation and transformation. And at first, again, she's this transformational meditation speaker, right? I'm like, well, she's a former professional tennis player, graduated from UC Berkeley, and also worked at a company like Nestle. And when you factor that as a base foundation, and then she says, I offer these transformation programs, and I'm very passionate about meditation, you have the solid base, and then she talks about what she does. Just to go with me too. Like I used to work for American Express on 40 Wall Street and several World Trade Center. So I have a very solid corporate background where I used to develop executive sales decks for our biggest clients like IBM, Pfizer, Microsoft. But what I'm doing here, Ralph, is I'm laying this foundation of my corporate experience and then saying, you know what, I've given over 1,000 presentations. I've gotten accolades from people from around the world. You should invest in my program. And so to answer your question succinctly, everyone has that unique quality. Everyone has the talent. Everyone has that story. But unfortunately, no one taught us how to share that story. No one goes to you in school and says, hey, Ralph, this is why stories are important. This is what Aristotle talked to us about ethos, powers, and logos. This is what book I read that's empirically based on why you should speak better. This is what Warren Buffett said. So if more people knew these strategies and the process and step-by-step system, they would be more successful. But unfortunately, everyone wants the lottery ticket. Everyone wants to be successful and make their millions, but they're not willing to do the work. And when I say to them, well, go to one place this week that's a 5-star hotel in your area and talk to 3 strangers. And then the first reaction might be, well, Chris, I'm afraid I don't have the money. I'm like, well, you spend $15 on a movie ticket. But if I ask you to spend that same money or invest that money in a cocktail at a 5-star hotel and you say no, then you're not going to be successful.
I love it. And that's a good assignment for listeners who want to make the step up in their big game hunting. So really neat. The ideas and concepts that you bring to the table to help us get to the next level in our business. What are you working on right now, Christopher, that's got you really excited?
Yeah, I briefly talked about it before, Ralph, this GPS program, the Gifted Professional Speaker Program, where I teach entrepreneurs like yourself how to become a global speaker, a paid speaker, and an online consultant. The online training space is $107 billion. If people are not online doing business, they're literally leaving millions on the table. I started this only a few months ago, and we're already in 46 cities, 11 countries, and 4 continents. And so anyone that's listening, if you want to make money, if you want to make a difference, we are literally in the most unprecedented time in human history right now. And when in the past, we have different gold rushes, but now if you're online, it's amazing. So if anyone's interested, again, it's called the GPS program. Check out my website, ChristopherKai.com. My last name is spelled Kai. You can email me at chris@ChristopherKai.com, and my assistant flags all the emails. She reads everything, and she forwards over the emails that are pertinent to this GPS program. And if anyone is ever interested in having me speak to their conference or business, I talk about the art and science of building successful business relationships, and they can check me out at Christopher Kai, last name Kai.com.
Very good. And for our listeners, again, it's ChristopherKai.com, and the last name is Kai. So ChristopherKai.com for those of you who want to find out more, to get more of Christopher's programs and services, and really tap into this idea of upping your networking game, going after the big game. I really like that concept, that idea, and the thoughts that you're sharing, Christopher. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom as we close out?
Yeah, so I have something called next level networking, and that's the speaking part, right? That's if you position yourself as a speaker, you'll be a next level networker, because the reality is if you go to a networking event with 500 people, you get business cards, go home, maybe you follow up. If you burn away that script and you position yourself as a speaker or a panelist, even if you don't speak well, as long as you have that substance and content, and you go to the same networking event with 500 people, now those 500 people will see you on stage or see you on the panel. You tell me, Ralph, where you have a much higher probability of getting clients of getting business partners, of getting investors, fans, or followers, and you become a speaker as opposed to just an attendee. So I want to leave with the fact that everyone on this call should be a next level networker, which is positioning themselves as a speaker or a panelist, because you'll just get so many more opportunities if you have that skill set and that status and that mindset.
Excellent words of wisdom from Mr. Christopher Kai, entrepreneur, global speaker, founder of the Gifted Professional Speaker Program, and #1 best-selling author of Big Game Hunting, Networking with Billionaires, Executives, and Celebrities. Chris, I really appreciate you being on the show today. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Ralph. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.